Charlie Parker is one of the great figures of jazz, but it's very hard these days to build a collection on vinyl of his music. And there are a number of reasons for that. I'm focused in this video on studio recordings, number one, and number two is master takes. Now, there are a lot of bootlegs out there of live performances, and they're, official releases and unofficial releases, and you've got Dean Benedetti recordings of only Byrd solos. So there's a lot of stuff out there from the live realm that I'm not going to get into in this video. I just want to focus on the studio sessions, and specifically the other point was the master takes, because many of the studio sessions exist. The problem is for the vinyl buyer and the vinyl listener, sometimes you don't want to sit down and listen to 17 takes of Marmaduke, one after the other, across 4 LPs. Sometimes, especially when you're listening to vinyl, you just want to put the needle on the record and listen. The recorded discography of Charlie Parker is basically split into 3. He was recording for Savoy Records, he was recording for Dial, and then finally, towards the end of his life, the last 4, 5, 6 years or so, he was recording for Norman Granz, recordings that ended up on the Verve label. So really, he had 13 sessions between Dial and Savoy, and these sessions represent 1945 to 1948. And of those 13 sessions, he was kind of with Dial and Savoy in an overlapping way. So for example, in August of 48 or August of 47, he'll record for Savoy, and then by October he's with Dial, and then he'll go back again. You've got Miles Davis, John Lewis, Dizzy Gillespie, just a little bit. You've got Bud Powell and Max Roach, Wardell Gray, Lucky Thompson, Dodo Marmarosa, list goes on. And these sessions were recorded either in Los Angeles or in New York. Most of them were recorded in New York. I want to take and recommend this particular set of Savoy master takes. And it's a 2 LP set, beginning with Tiny's Tempo and I'll Always Love You Just the Same, Romance Without Finance, and going into more famous kind of epochal Charlie Parker tunes like Coco, Donna Lee, Chasing the Bird, Cheryl, Milestones, Half Nelson, Sippin' at Bells, Parker's Mood, perhaps, Steeplechase. All of these ended up being jazz standards, and they're legitimately great recordings. This is a pretty cheap record to buy, I believe. I think it'll, 2 LPs for under 30 bucks, and you can't go wrong on this one. This is a lot harder to come by, and it's amazing that there is on vinyl, on LP, there is no collection of Dial recording master takes aside from this. That's it. You've got CD options, which are kind of hard to come by these days, but this recording out of the UK called Bird Lives is really the only option you have. And I think it's like, again, 35, maybe 40 bucks, usually coming from England on Spotlight Records. Dig and Diz, Moose the Mooch, Yardbird Suite, Ornithology, Night in Tunisia, the infamous Loverman recording session, Bird of Paradise, Embraceable You, Relaxing at Camarillo, Carvin' the Bird, Dewey Square, The Hymn. I mean, all classics. And this is really the only option that you have. Now, going forward into the later years of Bird's life, you've got Verve, and because Verve was a much far more legit label, and Norman Granz was very conscientious about the things that he put out, and he kind of understood that this music was a serious music that would be around for forever and should be recorded and chronicled. He recorded Charlie Parker very often in a variety of different contexts, away from the kind of jazz combo that you would hear in a club. So, for example, he put him in a Latin group with Machito. He put him in some of the most wonderful sessions that Bird is on at all are Charlie Parker with strings. In the 70s, Verve released 3 double LPs containing the complete master takes on Verve, and they're split up chronologically, which is helpful. You've got the Verve Years 48 through 50, 50 through 51, and 52 through 54. Now on 48 through 50, he's got some quartet and quintet recordings, but most of all, it's a split between the string sessions and also a session that's, you know, frankly not as good as it promised to be. It was a reunion session between Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker with Thelonious Monk on piano, which is Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie, and it's a fascinating document, if for nothing else. The second set, which is 50 to 51, focuses probably the most on the string sessions. They were very popular. They sold like hotcakes, and there's a reason why. It's because they were brilliant. And then the remainder is part of the Latin set, which ended up coming out on a set called South of the Border on Verve. And finally, the last years of Charlie Parker's recorded life and chronological life include the last of the string sessions, and some of these are real classics: Autumn in New York, Stella by Starlight, and then he does some more Latin stuff in the South of the Border vein. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different 2 LP sets, and you've got the complete discography of Charlie Parker master takes in the studio. Two kind of interesting issues associated with this problem, which is the problem of Charlie Parker on vinyl. And number one is, at that time when vinyl reissues were kind of first starting in the 70s, when record labels got a hold of or got control of old records that came out originally on 78s, they would put them out in an archival way. It was the beginning of sort of the methodological study of jazz, and you wanted to hear every take, 10 takes in a row, 45 takes in a row, if that's what they had. They never went that far, but you know the idea. There was an infinite appetite for as much Charlie Parker as you could possibly get, and as many different solo variations as you can get. So of course this is for discographical interest only, or musicological interest only. It's not for the casual listener. Let's be honest. And then on vinyl, you've got that extra layer of having to flip the record every 22, 23 minutes. And sometimes when there's one tune on it, it gets to be rather difficult. The other issue is something that I've been thinking about for a long time, which is how reissues and record label reissues strategies in particular sort of define what the canon is of an artist's work. This is very, I found this fascinating because I've seen it in my own life, in my own kind of collecting life with music. Sometimes the key record by Roy Eldridge is just not in print. Sometimes it's only the later recordings. I mean, this was especially true of Billie Holiday for a long time. For a long time, until the Columbia box came out, the Lady Day box. Pretty much you had availability, you had access in record stores to whatever came out on Verve or Columbia at the very end of her life. And that gave you a really skewed picture, or really skewed idea of what Billie Holiday sounds like. The collaborations with Lester Young, the collaborations with Johnny Hodges and folks from the Basie and Ellington bands, all of the early stuff, the Commodore recordings, Decca recordings, Strange Fruit, all of this stuff was kind of unavailable, or was hard to find. But of course you could find the later recordings with the raggedy voice and a lot of pathos and that stuff. So it did give you a different picture of what Billie Holiday was. And I think it's unavoidable when it comes to that, because we're dealing with things that we're dealing with, whether we're dealing with music or cinema or books or really whatever. I mean, these things are commodities. These are things that you purchase, which is to say somebody has to supply it. Somebody has to keep it in stock. You've got all kinds of rights issues going on. Somebody's got to conceive of a reissue or a reprint or a re-release or a remaster or something like that. Now, it's true that a lot of these companies want to take advantage, continually taking advantage of the customer who will repeatedly buy the same things over and over again. But that situation is preferable to not having anything in print at all, because then this stuff is really forgotten. If music is not bought and sold, we're really at the whim of folks who decide to put it out or not put it out for their own reasons. And you know, it's say what you will about it. It's a different world. I'm not sure if it's better. I'm not sure if it's worse, but it's certainly something to think about. Thanks for listening.